Welcome to the Antiquities Travel Guide. Follow us to different countries as we search for ancient artifacts. If you too wish to explore the ancient past through travel, we'll help you plan where to go, what to see, and how to best enjoy what you encounter. In this series of the ATG, you can accompany Mariza and me on our trek through England, homeland of the ancient Angles, Saxons, Romans, and Celtic Britons. Come on, let's go. Our northward journey took us to a small village in Northamptonshire called Piddington. I had found on the internet that here could be found the remains of a Roman villa. But not seeing any obvious signs, Mariza and I asked someone, and they pointed us to a field. They told us to just go that way. We walked quite a distance through the field and found what appeared to be the remains of a Roman home, but there was little there and not a soul around. There was an old trailer that kind of freaked Mariza out. We then found out about the Piddington Roman Museum in the village and went there. It was small, but the manager was friendly and there were some interesting artifacts. I found out that the dig is ongoing there and students come at certain times of the year. Having been here, I wouldn't say this is a must-see site, but if you're in the area, you might want to stop off. But if you do, definitely go to the museum first. After that, Mariza and I had a drink at a local pub in the village. The people inside seemed surprised to see two Americans there, but they were super friendly. After that, we went to Leicester in Leicestershire to see the Jewry wall and its museum. Leicester was an important settlement for the Oriental, a native British tribe who occupied the area known today as the East Midlands. Following the Roman conquest of 43 CE, the town was called Ratae Corieltavorum. It became a thriving center for the next 400 years. The Jewry Wall archaeological site sits right in the middle of town.
It's definitely padlocked.
When we got there, the museum was closed, and it looked as if we couldn't get access to the ruins either. But we walked around to the back street and found our way inside. No one else was there. It was basically a ghost site.
So behind me, as you can see, we have the Jewry Wall, which is one of the tallest remains of Roman architecture still here in Britain. Before the Romans came here in the year 43 AD, this site in the town of Leicester was actually the settlement of a British tribe called the Corieltavorum. For those of you who want to come here, don't be discouraged by the lock gates around. There's still an opening on the back side of the property that allows you access to this awesome site.
The wall here is the wall of a bathhouse. It's some 30 feet high. This here, and you'll see a bunch of them all around, is a putt log hole. This was used in the construction of the wall. You'll see them in a lot of Roman walls. They put a beam through here, and this is what holds the scaffolding that the workers work on as they're constructing the wall, and then they pull them out when the wall is finished. You can see these red granite tiles here. They used this as they were building up, and they used like 6 different kinds of granite in this, but these were used to level the wall as they moved up. If the wall was getting a little bit off kilter, they would use these to make it level again as they continued to ascend. All this was part of the bathhouse itself.
The bathhouse and next-door exercise hall were built around 154. The bathhouse consisted of 3 large caldaria, those are the hot baths, and 3 smaller tepidaria, those are the warm baths.
You may wonder why this is called the Jewry Wall. Well, let me tell you something. It has nothing to do with the Jews, okay? We think, it's just a theory, but this is how we think the name came to be, that this is the site where, in later times, 24 counselors called Jurots met here, and when it first got put onto a map, this was called the Jewry Wall, named after those Jurots, and then it got misspelled somewhere along the way, and now it's spelled Jewry, and people think it's linked with the Jews. Right behind the wall, you can see a church, the Church of St. Nicholas. That was built on top of the Roman exercise hall. The Romans had, in the 2nd century, built an exercise hall next to the bathhouse, but that was later demolished and turned into a church during the Saxon period.
Here you can see the backside of the wall. The wall was built using 6 different types of stone, from granite to millstone grit. The arched openings are tiled, and tiles are built into the course of the wall. One of the artifacts I was interested in seeing was the Thermiston milestone, a 2nd century Roman milestone probably erected during road repairs in anticipation of a visit by Emperor Hadrian himself around 120 CE. It was in the Jewry Wall Museum, but since that is now empty, I have no idea where the milestone is. I expect all the items from the museum are packed away in storage somewhere, in a place where no one can see them. Anyway, here's a photo of the milestone. The inscription reads, "The Emperor Caesar Trajan Hadrian Augustus, son of the deified Trajan, conqueror of Parthia, grandson of the deified Nerva, father of his country, in the 4th year of tribunician power, 3 times consul, from Ratai, 2 miles." This is one of the major Roman archaeological sites in Britain. So it's a real shame the museum is closed, and it just sits here, uncared for. From what I understand, it has been neglected for a couple of years and will remain closed for a while, as the city council doesn't appear to think it is a priority. I read that the mayor is seeking money for the project, but I don't know if any progress has been made or is likely to be made. In our experience, some places in England seem far more concerned about preservation of antiquities and its associated tourism than Leicester is. It just doesn't seem to be important to them. Then we hopped in the car and drove to Nottingham. Yep, the Robin Hood Nottingham, but he's a little after our time. We had dinner at a Japanese restaurant and stayed for the night at the Best Western. The weather began turning colder. The next day, our road trip took us to York, county town of Yorkshire. We were interested in visiting the Yorkshire Museum there. But first, as we walked along the River Ouse towards Station Road Bridge, we stopped off for something hot to drink and a bite to eat at a little cafe built right into the bridge called the Perky Peacock. So today we're in York, and we're going to be visiting the Yorkshire Museum, after which we're going to go up to the Aldborough Roman site, and then up to Durham, where we're going to visit 2 more museums, the Museum of Archaeology and the Oriental Museum. It's a bank holiday today, and we're hoping that everything's open, but we're not entirely sure. Then it was over the bridge towards the museum. Unlike the sites of old Roman towns we've been to up to now, the Romans did not build York during their conquests in the 40s CE. This one came a few decades later when the Roman Emperor Vespasian began pushing Roman forces further north in 71 CE. At that time, this part of England was inhabited by a loose confederation of Celtic peoples called the Brigantes. The 9th Legion came to this spot and established a fortress which could accommodate 5,000 men. That was the beginning of the settlement called Eboracum, York's Roman name. The word roughly means place of the yew trees, which means there probably weren't many people here before they arrived. A road was constructed, Ermine Street, which linked Eboracum to Londinium. Later, another road, Deer Street, was built to link Eboracum to Hadrian's Wall to the north. Look at, they have a Roman festival that we're going to miss. It's only a few days. Every spring, Yorkshire holds a Roman festival, which includes tours, symposia, reenactments, fun activities for the whole family.
So right now I'm outside of the Yorkshire Museum, which was built in 1830 and was originally built as a museum, unlike most of the other museums in the country. What's unique about this museum is a lot of the artifacts are actually found in this area. Right behind me, you'll see one of the original Roman legionary walls.
The Yorkshire Museum covers the city's history in both ancient and medieval times. We found the selection of ancient artifacts very interesting, and there's even an original mosaic floor with figures representing the 4 seasons, which you're allowed to walk on. Did you know that 2 Roman emperors died here in York? The more famous of the 2, and the first, was Septimius Severus, the first of the great military emperors. Severus was born in North Africa. In 193 CE, when the Emperor Pertinax was assassinated, and Didius Julianus, who then took the emperor's throne, himself was murdered, Severus marched into Rome with his troops and took the throne for himself. In 208, Septimius Severus, along with his 2 sons, Caracalla and Geta, marched to Britain to fight against the Caledonians. The Caledonians were a Brittonic Celtic tribe occupying what is now Scotland. The ancient Roman historian Tacitus describes them as, quote, red-haired and large-limbed, unquote. Although the emperor is said to have scored a victory, he fell ill while there, and on the 4th of February, 211, he died at Eboracum. Ancient Roman historian Cassius Dio says that when Severus knew he was going to die, he sent for an urn of purple stone, into which his ashes would be deposited. And he said, "You shall hold a man that the world could not hold." Reportedly, his last words to his sons were, "Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorn all other men." That tells you a little bit about Severus's views. Despite their father's advice, Caracalla and Geta would turn on each other later on. Not far from York is Aldborough, a village containing a minor English heritage site. I would call it a Category 3, which we visited next.
So right now, I'm outside of the Aldborough Roman site. Within this site, you can find 2 mosaics that are found in their original location, in addition to parts of the original town wall. In the 1st century, this site was the home of the largest tribe in Britain, the Brigantes.
It's a pleasant enough site, and I'm happy that they're taking good care of it, but there really isn't much left of the town, at least not on the site itself. Here we have the site of the famed Helicon mosaic. Where is it? There's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing to look at. But it's where the mosaic once stood, I guess. Remember when I was talking about York? I told you it was established as a base in 71, from which to fight the Brigantes. Well, this is where a fort was built in 79, for pretty much the same reason.
The Romans called this place Isurium Brigantium. Isurium because originally the name of the settlement was Isur, that was the local name for it that the Brigantes gave to it, and Brigantium to differentiate this Isurium from others, so they called it Isurium Brigantium, the Isurium of the Brigantes tribe.
Initially, it did not appear as if the Romans would have much trouble with the Brigantes. Cartismandua, also known as Cartimandua, the leader of the Brigantes, was an ally of the Romans. She had been their ruler probably since the 40s. We have evidence for an Iron Age settlement in Stanwick, further north near Richmond, which is where Cartismandua resided. But in the 50s, she and her husband Venutius became estranged, and he formed a breakaway faction of the Brigantes in opposition to her. Not knowing about the conflict between Cartismandua and her husband, the Romans were focused on subjugating land south of Brigantes' territory, thinking they would have no trouble from the Brigantes. But when Venutius attacked his wife with his forces and defeated her in 69, the Romans were drawn into conflict with Venutius. That's why they built a fortress at Eboracum, York, in 71.
But the Romans ended up making war on the Brigantes, finally subjugating the area, and it was Julius Agricola who first built the Roman fortress here in the year 79. Although Tacitus says there was a settlement here called Isur before the Romans came and built their fort, we have no archaeological evidence of that. Instead, it looks like the settlement was built after the Roman fort, because the Roman fort was here, and it became a Roman civitas. That was in the latter part of the 1st century. The site was very popular among Roman aristocrats who had come from Eboracum, York nearby, and so many of them built their villas on this site.
From Aldborough, we drove out to our final destination of the day, the city of Durham. We went to the center of town. The city wasn't founded until 995 CE, so that's beyond our purview, but we wanted to visit a couple of their museums. The university sits on top of the hill, and you have to park at the bottom, so it's a bit of a hike. I have to tell you, the old section of town is absolutely gorgeous. It has kind of a Diagon Alley feel to it. The first museum we went to, right at the top, near the cathedral, the Museum of Archaeology, didn't have much in the way of ancient artifacts. There was really only one small room of interest in that regard. More rewarding was the Oriental Museum. To get there, we had to walk down the other side of the hill and over a bridge. Retrospectively, I would say it would have been better to drive, but the way was beautiful, and we got a good workout.
So I'm here right now at Durham University's Oriental Museum. This museum is unique because it has artifacts from all over Asia, including China, Japan, Korea, and even India. The museum also includes a whole section on ancient Egypt as well.
There was a lot to look at here, so if you're an ancient history lover and are ever anywhere near Durham, this Category 2 museum is definitely worth a visit. You can see everything, I would say, in about 90 minutes. The Egyptian and Chinese sections are the best. We had dinner at a place called Bell's Fish and Chips. It was right on a rounded corner. We learned that the corner used to be square, but there was a major accident involving 2 horse-drawn carriages in the old days, and so after that they rounded it. The food was delicious.
Sticky toffee pudding, gooseberry, and apple treacle crumble.
We saw many great sights and many fabulous ancient treasures over the last 2 days. I hope you enjoyed following us on our trip so far. Tomorrow we'll be heading up to Hadrian's Wall. And let me tell you, there are many amazing things to see. If you want to join us, in the virtual sense, don't forget to hit subscribe and the little bell, and you'll be notified when the video goes up. Thank you, and we'll see you then.